if you pick the wrong people, first of all, as a franchisor, you're not going to want to keep doing this if you've picked so many of the wrong people. If you sold too many too soon to the wrong people, then you're definitely not going to survive it. I think
Yeah.
besides the execution of it, what I've noticed from interviewing so many people also is the reason why franchisors quit. It's because the franchisor didn't make the transition from being in the business they were in to being a
Yeah.
franchisor. Like if you still thought you were in the dog wellness space
Yeah.
only.
Totally.
We've had a big education on franchising in the last 5 years.
Oh, I bet. Oh, we get absolutely beaten with a stick, right? We're going to get hit if we don't learn that lesson. I think that's why so many of franchisors quit when they think they're like still in the restaurant business because they own a restaurant. It's like, no, you're no longer in the restaurant business. You're in the business of making franchisees successful in a business that just so happens to, have this theme or this restaurant.
I think it's a really great point. I think that's very much the case. It's a completely different business from the business that you were in before.
Right.
And so you've got to be able to make that transition and just be aware that you're starting a whole different kind of business than what you were operating before.
What about you guys are one of the first franchisors, founders that I've interviewed that is still emerging based on time, but not emerging based on numbers. Why do you think 84% of all franchisors don't get to 100 units? I know, Tim, you mentioned the 50 and they kind of fizzle out, but why do you think so many don't get there?
Yeah, I think we've spoken about a lot of those things. Like, look, one of the things that in my research and really understanding franchising was don't get the wrong franchisees in the beginning. The problem is you don't know until you know, right?
Right.
Every franchise system has a slightly different profile, right? Your avatar might look different for one brand versus another. You might need this kind of person for that or that kind of person for that. So that's one thing. And then you really understand kind of as you run the business what the real avatar is, what versus what you imagined the avatar to be, right? And so I think one of the things is like you have to adapt really darn quick. So you're gonna go out and get the people that you think are the right partners. You're going to find a percentage of them are not the right partners. You need to then adapt to say, okay, how do I learn from this as quickly as possible and change it while dealing with the pressures of, I got to make the next payroll, right? I got to pay for that. So I'm trying to bring in revenue. We took care of some of that pressure there. And so I think that's kind of one of the big reasons. And I think the last part of that is the wrong people, you need to help them find the next thing, right? Like how do you get them to a place that, like how do you turn that center over to someone that's going to be the right person instead of subsisting in that and trying to battle through that. So that's a big part of it. I think not clearly understanding the pillars of your scalability, like what actually makes your model, what actually makes you money. And I think a lot of people misunderstand, just like I misunderstood, hey, the employee part's not the hard part. The employee part is the hard part.
Right.
I just happen to be really good at it, right? But it is the hard part, period, across all businesses. So how do you put a system in place to help support people to be successful on those pillars of scalability? And then I think clearly articulating your why and getting people aligned with your why and your values so that people can join. Because I'm fired up every morning to come in because I really care deeply about what we do.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't have that juice injected into the system, this would be awful, right? It would be awful for anybody.
Yeah.
So you got to have the juice that gets you. Like I always say, the entrepreneurial journey isn't from here to success. The entrepreneurial journey is like here, then awful, then great, then terrible, then awful, then great. And it's this crazy crooked line to get you there.
Uh-huh.
And so celebrate your wins and then get back to your values and whys when you're in those hard times so that you can weather those peaks and valleys.
Smart. What about your franchisees themselves? If you have 108 that are open, I'd like you to think about the personality of your first 8. And now think about the most recent 8 franchises that have joined. Number 101 through 108. How do they differ?
I actually don't think they differ all that much, would be my answer. I think personality profile wise we're a couple of those initial few, probably not the right candidates or profiles for operating a Scenthound? Possibly. But I think that we've actually known very much who we are from the very beginning. And I don't think it's a hugely different profile of who we've brought in. I think there's been learnings. I think the number of units that we've awarded has potentially changed, and our thinking around that has shifted. I think in the very initial part of looking for franchise partners, we were looking for dog people. I don't think that's what I think we ended up with franchise partners who were very much people and business people. I think it was an initial mistake that we were looking for kind of dog people first in who we were searching for as franchise partners, when this is really a business about people, and it's also about dogs, but they couldn't be just dog people. They also had to be business people and people to run this business well.
Sure. We all, I think we all do that. I felt in my experience, my first, dozen or so were risk takers. They won't take a chance on me, where, once I got over 100, it was people that were, they were a little more risk averse. They definitely wanted to see that there was more systems and processes in place. Those folks never would have joined me in the very beginning.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. That's definitely fair to say. And we're just kind of tipping into that new landscape. We've just hit 100, a couple months ago. So we're just kind of tipping into that new landscape. And I think that will very much be the case. Our early adopters, so to speak, were very much so more willing to take the risk. I just do really think that the fundamental, in terms of the fundamental personality, I think that we knew who we were then, and we know who we are now. And I don't think that's changed. And so I do think that the overall type of person is values aligned in the same way that they were then and now. That's
fair. Jessica, it sounds to me, you guys definitely had a leg up than a lot of franchisors that start, in that many of us don't know totally who we are when we start franchising. We think we know, but we quickly find out, no, we need to make an adjustment and pivot who we are in order for the model to work. But you guys
agreed. And we did the hard work ahead of time.
I mean, my favorite saying is, we're an overnight success that took us 15 years to achieve.
Exactly. Tim, okay, how did we get to, we have 108 that are open, but we have 172 in development. We're talking multi-unit franchises that haven't opened yet. Kind of walk me through how we're getting to 280 franchises.
Yeah, so we really are a multi-unit brand because of how we've put our employee career path in place. So really, you start with this as a Scentech or a member associate, with a career path to becoming a manager or an area manager. So our very best franchisees, their area managers and managers all started at the ground level with them. And so because we've got this built-in career path, because we actually make our own technicians, you need to give them an opportunity to grow with you. So you're running our system for the first year, you're going to have actually too many trimmers. So you need to open up your next location to give an assistant manager opportunity, and that assistant manager an opportunity to be a manager. And that's part of what creates such a sticky environment for this employee journey, and part of what we reverse engineered to really create that model. So we've actually got a couple franchisees already with 5 units opening and opening more. We've got a couple 4-unit franchisees already. So a lot of that number is multi-units where people are developing. And we typically, a sweet spot for us is either a 3 or 5 pack unit, right? So, and the kind of one other thing I would say is my experience with running Scenthounds is it's easier to run 3 than it is to run 1. And it's because of the depth of the bench on staffing, because it's all about people at the end of the day. And so we make the territories that you can buy have to be contiguous so that you can actually move employees around from center to center to fill in those gaps. But if I've got one location and I have 2 people call out in a day, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I got to cancel appointments, creates a bad customer experience, versus, hey, employee X, can you go over to location Y today and help support us over there? That actually smooths things out and makes your life much easier. And now you've got multiple locations building skilled technicians, building managers, and then the cream rises to the top within these centers. Why we have such successful multi-units happening out there right now.
Do franchisees have to be employees first? Do they have to be techs or managers before they can buy a franchise?
No, we don't require that. We do have a contingent of franchisees that what we really recommend is their very first hire is their future area manager. So go hire a better, more capable person that's got the experience. They then manage that first location. We bring in, and then they run that career path system that then they can replace themselves and then go open the second location and then get a manager in there, and then they're overseeing multiple. And that's really the system we're running for the multi-units.
It's like being a Major League Baseball team with a farm system.
Exactly right. Now, some of them want to go and run it themselves. I love that. That's my preference.
Okay.
The reality is, in my opinion, so I should say my opinion, there's no such thing as an absentee business. I have not seen it in the entrepreneurial world successfully. Maybe it happens, not in my experience. So someone says, hey, I just want to kind of hire someone and let it run. That's not going to work. You have to be engaged in that business, period. You got to be engaged. It is your business.
Right.
It is your livelihood. It is your capital. You have to be engaged. So that's a strong belief we have.
No one's going to care as much as you.
Yeah, that is a huge difference. But anytime you hear somebody say, oh, the business completely, absentee of the owner being involved in any way, run, don't walk, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Jessica, what about from the marketing and branding? I mean, clearly you guys knew who you were from the very beginning, but how has it evolved in just the past few years to where you are today? What's
it's evolved a lot. It's evolved a lot, actually. We are truly in our model creating a new category of dog care, really around this routine hygiene and wellness space. So that being said, we've had this evolution and we started in traditional grooming. We consider ourselves very different from traditional grooming. We're very focused on hygiene and wellness, health and wellness, and not on kind of the aesthetics of traditional grooming and making dogs look pretty. Well, there's definitely a place for that. That's not our focus. And so there has been an evolution, and we're still in an evolution of how we market to the marketplace, because we've kind of stepped our way away from the grooming terminology and kind of the concept of grooming. And it's a transition, because if you create a new category and you're, really kind of trailblazing this new market space as we are, you've got a whole marketplace to educate on what you're doing and why they need your services, right? So there's 90 million dogs in the US. A lot of those dog parents don't think that their dogs need grooming in the traditional sense. So we have, kind of set out to educate the marketplace, and that's through marketing, right? So marketing our services, part of that strategy is to educate the marketplace on the importance of what we do in the overall health and wellness of their dog. So it's been an evolution, because we started kind of with grooming language because that's what people understood, and that's how we could reach the audience that was existing out there. We're in a transition though, and it's still going, and there'll be a tipping point at some point where everyone understands the monthly hygiene services is, of course, what you do for your dog. It's just the norm, right? Because it should be, because all dogs need the care that we provide, at least on a monthly basis. So it's this evolution of our brand and kind of our messaging to the marketplace, moving away from that traditional grooming concept into this monthly hygiene services and wellness care.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fumey, or Emerging Franchise Group LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.